Picture this. Your life savings, scraped together over years, suddenly can't even get you a loaf of bread. Imagine a country printing $100 trillion bills and they're not enough. Sounds like some wild sci-fi story, right? But this was real life in Zimbabwe. Their money, once actually worth than the US dollar, completely tanked, making Zimbabwe a worldwide symbol of economic disaster. So how does a nation's cash get so worthless that people are saying toilet paper is more valuable? We're about to unpack the unbelievable story of the Zimbabwean dollar and an inflation crisis that's hard to even wrap your head around. Get this, November 2008, Zimbabwe's monthly inflation, a staggering 79.6%. And no, that's not for the whole year that was. Prices weren't just going up weekly or daily, they were doubling in a matter of hours. People weren't hauling money around in wheelbarrows because they were loaded. They needed that much cash just for basic groceries. This is the insane story of how a country's money just vanished, turning banknotes into, well, something worth even less than the paper they were printed on. Believe it or not, it wasn't always a disaster. Back when Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980, things looked pretty bright. The economy was strong, built on solid farming, mining, and industry. They launched the brand new Zimbabwean dollar, and here's a shocker, it started out worse than the US dollar. For a little while, Zimbabwe was a real shining star in southern Africa. But then, trouble started brewing in the 90s and early 2000s. Political wobbles, a growing mess of economic mistakes, and more talk about corruption, it all started adding up. The rest of the world began to get nervous and that bright future started to dim. Then came a huge turning point, something many experts say really tipped the scales, the controversial land reform program that kicked off in 2000. Farms were taken, often by force without payment, and completely ignoring court orders. This wasn't just about who owned the land, it was a direct hit on basic property rights and the whole idea of a country following its own laws. You can imagine the message that's sent to investors both at home and abroad. It was terrifying. Confidence, that invisible thing every economy absolutely relies on, started to crack. And the fallout? It was fast and harsh. Between 2000 and 2008, the average Zimbabwean wasn't just treading water, their slice of the economic pie shrank by over 8%. The country's economic engine wasn't just coughing, it was starting to die. Farming, once a huge source of pride, took a nosedive. Factories produced less. That hopeful dream from 1980, it was quickly becoming a nightmare. The scene was set for an economic implosion so massive, it would make people question what money was even worth. What came next wasn't just inflation. It was, and honestly, that word barely scratches the surface of the economic chaos that swallowed Zimbabwe. We're talking the second worst case of hyperinflation ever recorded, beaten only by Hungary right after World War II. The numbers? They're so huge they almost don't mean anything. By November 2008, the yearly inflation rate hit an insane 89.7 sextillion %. That's an 89 with 21 zeros after it. Seriously, try to get your head around that. Prices weren't just climbing, they were exploding. Every day, every hour. By 2008, stuff was basically doubling in price every 24 hours. Imagine going to sleep and waking up to find the cash in your wallet was worth half of what it was just hours before. That was life for millions of Zimbabweans. So, what did the government and the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe do about this runaway crisis? Well, looking back, a lot of their moves just seemed to throw fuel on the fire. They printed massive amounts of new money, at first to pay for military action in the Congo and to buy essential food because their own farms weren't producing enough. But just printing tons of cash without anything real to back it up, that's a textbook way to make your money worthless. More and more money was chasing fewer and fewer things, sending prices sky high. In a pretty desperate and ultimately useless move, the government even made inflation illegal. They banned price increases. But things like economic forces, they don't really care about government rules. The hyperinflation just kept spinning out of control, wrecking everything. The Reserve Bank had to keep rejigging the currency. In 2006, then again in 2008, and once more in 2009, they just chopped zeros off the banknotes. A $10 billion note might suddenly become a $10 note, but it still couldn't buy you anything. And the banknotes themselves? As the money became more and more useless, the numbers on the bills had to get bigger and bigger. First thousands, then millions, then billions. And finally, that infamous symbol of the whole mess, the Z dollar $100 trillion note, $100,000 billion on one piece of paper. It sounds like a punchline, but it was the harsh reality of a currency on its deathbed, a money system that had totally collapsed. The numbers are mind-blowing, sure, but they don't paint the whole picture. The real gut punch of Zimbabwe's hyperinflation was what it did to everyday people. Just a constant, grinding struggle with uncertainty and hardship. Can you imagine your entire life savings, all that hard work over years just vanishing into thin air practically overnight? That was the heartbreaking reality for so many Zimbabweans. Pensions, gone, bank accounts, just meaningless digits on a screen. Even something as simple as buying groceries turned into a massive headache. People literally needed wheelbarrows, plastic bags, anything they could find, just to lug around enough cash for basics like bread, milk, or maize meal. Store shelves were often empty because businesses couldn't figure out how to price things when the money was losing value by the minute. Sometimes prices would jump several times in a single day. You could walk into a shop with enough for a loaf of bread, and by the time you got to the till, the price had doubled, and your money was no good. The banks, the system that keeps a modern economy ticking, they pretty much ground to a halt. How can banks even work when the money people deposit is becoming worthless so fast? They couldn't gather funds for important investments or give out loans, which just choked the economy even more. Unemployment shot through the roof, hitting a crazy 80% when things were at their worst. Factories shut down, businesses went bust, and the normal economy just shriveled up. With their own money basically useless, people had to go back to old-school ways of trading. In many ways, the economy just became a giant barter system. You might trade a bag of maize for some sugar, or do a job in exchange for food. Foreign money, especially US dollars and South African rand, became like gold on the black market, a tiny bit of stability in all that financial chaos. Many Zimbabweans, seeing no way forward at home, made the tough choice to leave, looking for a better life somewhere else, with South Africa being a common destination. And those $100 trillion notes, they became a pretty dark joke. You heard stories of them being sold as souvenirs to tourists for just a few US bucks. When the crisis was at its peak, the Zimbabwean dollar was so worthless that, no exaggeration, it cost more to print it than what it could buy. Some even said actual toilet paper was more valuable, a truly stark and embarrassing symbol of a country's money completely collapsing. Society was strained, trust was gone, and just getting through each day was all that mattered. That was the human toll of hyperinflation, a price paid not just in unimaginable numbers, but in broken lives and lost dreams. This whole Zimbabwe currency saga is a pretty sobering reminder of just how delicate economies can be, isn't it? If you're finding this look into one of history's wildest economic meltdowns as fascinating as we do, why not take a second to subscribe and ring that notification bell? We explore complicated stories like this one every week, trying to get a better handle on the big forces that shape our world. Your support really helps us keep sharing these crucial stories. By early 2009, things just couldn't go on. The Zimbabwean dollar, it basically wasn't even money anymore. Regular folks, businesses, nobody wanted it. The government, staring down the barrel of a completely worthless currency, had to do something big and fast. So, in February 2009, Zimbabwe officially gave up on its own dollar. They made it legal to use foreign currencies for everything, a process called dollarization. This mostly meant the US dollar and the South African rand became the everyday money. In a lot of ways, they were just making official what was already going on in the streets because people had been scrambling for more stable foreign cash for ages. The effect of this move, it was almost instant. That out-of-control hyperinflation, the one that seemed like it would never stop, it just slammed to a halt. With real, stable money flowing again, things started to get a bit more predictable. Prices settled down, shops started filling their shelves again, businesses could actually plan, make budgets, and trade with some confidence. Around the same time, a national unity government was formed in 2009. This brought rival political groups together and, for a while at least, led to a calmer political scene. This mix of dollarization and more stable politics worked wonders. While that unity government was in place, from 2009 to 2013, the average Zimbabwean's income, which had been plummeting for almost 10 years, jumped by an average of 11.2% each year. It was an incredible turnaround, a real lifeline for an economy that had been teetering on the edge. The days of wheelbarrows full of useless paper money were over, at least for the time being. Using foreign currencies had put out the hyperinflation fire, letting Zimbabwe's economy slowly and carefully start to heal. But even though the blaze was out, the scars were deep, and the road to real, long-term economic health was still a long one. Plus, relying on other countries' money meant Zimbabwe's central bank lost a lot of control over its own financial policy. Now, the stability that came with using foreign money was a huge relief, no doubt, but Zimbabwe still wanted its own currency, a symbol that they were in charge of their own economy. The thing is, Zimbabwe's story with its own cash was a long way from over, and the road ahead? Flash forward to April 2024, and Zimbabwe kicked off yet another currency adventure with a brand new one, the Zimbabwe Gold, or ZiG. This time they said it was backed by the country's actual reserves, like 2.5 tons of gold and about $100 million in cash, hoping that would build some confidence. Officials said it was all about resetting its money policy to get prices and exchange rates stable again. Despite all the promises and a fairly quiet start, the ZiG soon ran into the same old problems. By September 2024, just a few months in, the ZiG had reportedly lost a lot of its value on the black market. This forced the central bank to officially slash its value by 43% against the US dollar. Reports from early 2025 showed it was still struggling, with the ZiG continuing to fall and inflation heating up. For example, by February 2025 the official rate was around 26.4 ZiG to $1, a big drop since it launched, and the black market rate was even worse. Inflation over the year jumped to 14.6% in January 2025, way up from 2.5% just the month before. Now there were some blips in mid-2024 where the ZiG held steady for a month, and some forecasts for economic growth in 2025 looked okay, but those deep-seated problems of keeping the currency stable and getting people to trust it just won't go away. Businesses and everyday folks are still pretty cautious, and a lot of deals are still apparently done in US dollars, even though the government is pushing to make ZiG the only currency by 2030, a deadline the ruling party wants to speed up. That constant difference between the official and black market rates just keeps killing faith in any local money. It's this heartbreaking cycle. Launch a new currency, watch it lose value, and see inflation spike. It seems so hard to escape. So, this whole roller coaster story of Zimbabwe's money from being strong to collapsing spectacularly, and its continuing battles, it's way more than just an economics lesson. It's a huge wake-up call about what money really is, and what happens when people completely lose faith in it. What are the big takeaways from this incredible and often brutal journey? Well, first off, governments absolutely have to be careful with their spending. Just printing money to pay bills without the economy actually growing to back it up is a super risky game. It almost always leads to inflation, and sometimes, like in Zimbabwe, to full-blown hyperinflation. Second, you can't mess with property rights and the rule of law. Those land seizures that ignored basic legal principles. Many see that as a key trigger for the economic freefall. It just shows how crucial a stable, fair legal system is for a healthy economy. Third, it all comes down to trust. At its heart, money works because we believe in it. Once that belief is shattered, it's incredibly hard and takes ages to get back. Slapping on a new currency name or even backing it with gold won't magically fix things if the basic economic problems aren't sorted. Then there's the amazing way people adapt. When the official money system breaks down, people always find other ways. They barter, they use foreign cash, they build their own informal ways of trading. And finally, if you really want a lasting economic fix, you need more than just a new currency. You've got to tackle the deep-rooted problems that cause the instability in the first place. Things like how the country is run, how much it's producing, and whether its financial policies actually make sense. Zimbabwe's nightmare, where money literally became cheaper than toilet paper, is one of the most extreme warnings from history about what happens when a currency dies. It's a stark reminder that the true value of money isn't in the fancy paper it's printed on, but in the stability, the trust, and the overall economic health of the country that issues it. So what do you make of Zimbabwe's wild ride with its currency? Are there any other major economic meltdowns you're curious about and want us to explore? Drop your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. If this story gave you some food for thought, please hit that thumbs up button, share it with anyone you think would find it interesting, and definitely subscribe for more explorations of these kinds of fascinating global events. Thanks for sticking with us.